Mike,
You can't hear anything.
try again.
Can't hear you. Cannot hear you.
Check the settings, maybe.
Oh, great.
There it goes.
Be a jerk.
Wait, no.
No, I'm here.
Okay,
Y'all can hear me. I'm here.
okay.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. Nah, StreamYard's goofy, man. It doesn't recognize stuff. Sometimes you have to manually set it.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. One
do what it's
stream it
supposed
did
to
that to
do.
my mic.
It always does something like crazy.
Yeah.
What is going on with this outlet? Like, sorry, y'all. StreamYard decided to want to do a bunch of
Yeah.
updates and things that we don't want
Mhm.
to
Got all
do that it
complicated.
shouldn't be doing. So, like, there's squares that are spaced. I don't know if this is fixable. Can we fix this?
Let me take a little peek here. Let me see.
There it is. That's not even that.
Almost.
I mean, if we have to, we can use that one.
Nope, that's
Nope.
not it.
Everybody's watching us like we're crazy. Like, what are you guys doing?
What's up, Razor? My forehead is giant.
Oh, there's more. There's more here. There's custom. There's this kind of stuff.
It looks like
there's-
they added some new ones.
Yeah, that's the problem. They keep adding things that we don't ask for. We're not saying, hey, we might just have to use that one, unfortunately.
If we want to look at it later off stream, there's custom layouts we can do.
Yeah, we'll probably have to set up a new one because this is
A little awkward.
yeah. We'll go with the squares for now because that's the other thing side by side is even worse. So we'll go with the squares.
Nice job, StreamYard. Once again, nice job. Sorry, y'all. That is like a lot of the stuff that you see, like my mic and stuff like that. That's not us. We are well prepared when we come into the studio. Everything is usually good. We just run it as it is. But lately, StreamYard's been updating their software, doing things that nobody has asked for, stuff I'd never asked for. I know Spider didn't ask for it. And it's starting to become obnoxious at this point. So StreamYard, if you're listening, don't make me have to be like, what happened to the stream? Because it's just not nice. And
I am going to be sending a strongly worded email about the new studio setup because I don't like it. I don't like it one.
It just seems like it's adding extra steps. Like we don't need the extra steps. We were good the way we had it. And now you guys go and do this with the 3 squares. I'm not a big super fan of this, to be quite fair, frank and honest.
4 versions ago.
Yeah, I like StreamYard like 5 updates ago.
Yeah.
It was great. Welcome, everybody, to episode 348. We're going to be talking about Summit County, where I reside. My co-host does not reside in the same county I do. He resides one county over.
Used to.
He used to reside here. So we're going to be focusing on the Akron side of Summit County. So for those of you that don't know, the AK Rowdy, as they say. So we're going to be focusing on that. Does anybody have any announcements or anything they would like to say before we begin the process of the show?
At least as far as the business end, everything is moving forward as usual. We don't have any huge major things going on soon, I don't think. But I do expect to have all of this cleared up by the time you see us next. I'm figuring out what they did with a lot of the updates, so we're going to get that fixed. Other than that, I don't believe we have any events currently in the very near future. We have things coming several months down the road in the spring.
We do.
But nothing that's in imminent that we got to talk about now. So I think we're pretty good. I think we're set for a good ghost story situation here.
Excellent. As you know, I will be presenting in April at an event.
See,
so
I would have forgotten something.
But that's April, and that's a couple months down the road. So a warm month down the road. So we'll be doing that. We'll be in Pennsylvania. I'm gonna try to drag old Spider with me because why not try to drag the old man out? Yeah, I gotta drag him out of his house sometimes. He'd just be in his house being old, I can't let him be old in his house. He'd be like those old people that they find in like the chair. Yeah, see, he's very much a get out of my yard person. That's what his presidential campaign would run on, is getting people out of his yard. not anything, just his yard. He'd be like, hey, get out of my yard. You would have
That's why I put the fence up.
He would put the White House where
I
his
built
house
a big, beautiful fence.
It's big and beautiful. All right. Anyways, welcome. I'm your host, Robert Solomon, as always. And I'm here tonight with my grumpy co-host, because he's always grumpy. I don't think he's ever not been grumpy. Ladies and gentlemen, the freshly cut, freshly squeezed Spider. Look at that. Look at
I
that
know.
debonair.
I
He's
mentioned this
rocking
before
those
that I looked like I was living in a cave in Afghanistan and they were pulling me out with the Navy SEALs or something. So
I would hope that would happen. And of course, below me, the man that does look like they just freshly pulled him out of a cave in Afghanistan, but with the sweet, sweet Fallout New Vegas sweatshirt that I
Yep.
like. Very cool, very cool. Ladies and gentlemen, it is, of course, Steven, no longer the intern, so that's awesome. Speaking of Fallout, the TV show is amazing. I don't know if you guys watched it yet. I just finished the last episode on Wednesday. So very good, very good. I know it's not your thing, which is weird, but I get it. I get it. So let's jump right into this because we got to let Streamyard know. So we're going to first start off with a place that is quintessential to Akron, to Summit County, to the world, really. And that would be the Akron Beacon Journal Publishing Building. Now, this is one of the oldest continuously operating businesses in Summit County, and it was first published back in 1839 by Hiram Bowen. And in 1896, the Akron Evening Journal existed to compete with the newspaper itself. And so in 1897, both were bought and they were combined into one beautiful thing that we know as the Beacon Journal. Now, Stephen probably doesn't know much about it, but I know Spider and myself have read the Beacon Journal before. We've picked it up, we've seen it, we've looked at it. I think I have a couple Beacon Journals. I think I have one when the Cavs won the championship, and then I have another for I think 9/11. I think I have that one too. So I have a couple different newspapers. Now, Charles Landon Knight and his son John S. Knight, and many of you that know Akron, the John S. Knight Center is downtown Akron, and it is named for that gentleman. And it is now owned by the Gannett, which is the largest newspaper publisher in circulation. Now, it was housed in the Akron Times Press building that was built in 1930. However, printing ceased in 2013 and it was relocated in 2019. It is a cornerstone of Akron journalism and it's known throughout the United States and some of the world. Now, the first ghost we're going to get into, which I find to be very interesting, is a person that they call the Phantom. Nobody really calls her that. I have made that up because I think that's a really cool name. Her name is Fran, but she's known as a phantom there, so she's the Phantom. That's right, the Phantom.
I like it.
And not Peter Frampton, not Peter Frampton, the Phantom.
still looking for his pig.
Still. Now, one Fran Murphy who worked at the Beacon Journal as a legendary reporter. She had signature bib overalls and her hair was a stylish white. She had an infectious laughter that populated the Beacon newsroom. Now, in 1998, Fran would lose her battle with liver cancer. However, her spirit is said to roam the publishing house even into this day. Papers disappearing and reappearing in different places, computers locking up at the absolute worst times, and chairs moving ever so slightly so it made you wonder, did I push the chair in or did I pull the chair out? These were common occurrences. And it was said at late night intervals, the Phantom, once again, that's my calling her that. Nobody calls her that. Uncanny calls her that. The Phantom would haunt the women's restroom. Because what better place to haunt in the afterlife than a restroom? That's right, late night. If you were working late night, you would hear the paper towel dispenser whir to life, and it would spring out so many paper towels. Now, one might think, hey, maybe that's just a bad paper towel. Maybe it's a bad paper towel holder. Maybe it's just,
Yeah.
But I've heard that it was replaced and the same thing happened. So you have to ask yourself if it's really the Phantom or it's just a bad faulty circuit. But I think I'm leaning more towards the Phantom. Now, a janitor working one warm summer night heard the rustling of these said towels in the adjacent restroom. When she went to check out what was going down, she felt shoulder taps and a freezing wind And when she looked in the mirror, she saw none other than the phantom in the mirror. Now, that night, I can only imagine. Listen, I'm the type of person, if I'm working late night, and listen, we're gonna get into something I saw a little bit later on here. That's it. I'm done. I'm not working there no more. It's not gonna happen. I'm sorry. I'll be home in bed. I'll get a day job, but there's no phantoms. Nobody can haunt me and spit paper towels at me, because that would be rough. That would be a rough situation. Now, others also felt these shoulder taps and heard hearty chuckles when no one was there. Now, on the last day before they relocated, some say they caught a glimpse of the white-haired, bib-wearing phantom. Was it, in fact, the phantom? To see if deadlines were being met in the afterlife? Who knows? Who knows? News today, gone tomorrow. Now we're going to get in a little conversation about this, because I want to know what my two cohorts, partners in crime, have to say about this. Spider, let's start with you. As a resident of Summit County for X amount of years, did you know about the Akron Beacon Journal place being haunted? I didn't know this. This is something that this is all recent information for me, but what are your thoughts, and did you know about this?
I don't think I heard that story before, but the more I've thought about it, it doesn't really come as a huge surprise. Not necessarily this specific instance, but you have to wonder, especially back, like right now, there's so much news and stuff, and a lot of it's like people are over worried about some news that isn't a big deal and under worried about news that is a big deal. And back then, the landscape was different. When news came in, like this is important, this is emotional, this is whatever. And many newsrooms, I feel like, across the country or even the world, are kind of like focuses. They're focused areas, like a nexus of emotional energy, because of how people are reacting to the news, how fast they have to get the news out to the people, how responsible they feel towards the people to get them the news and to make sure it's fair and unbiased. And maybe there's been an explosion here, or there's been a tragedy here, and there's been these things, and you have to work through all of those emotions yourself and still present things without completely falling apart. So you have to kind of push a lot of that stuff down to be a good news reporter at the time. Now we have news shows and people freak out all the time. But you would think that because of all this energy buildup and everything that's kind of there, that you would hear about hauntings a bit more often at some of these places. It seems like a place that would be, this is the most likely of a place to have hauntings, whether by people who were traumatized by the news that came in, or people who were just that dedicated to the job, to presenting, quote unquote, the truth and the facts and making sure people heard it, that they're going to stay there pretty much forever after the fact. And it left an impression, it left an echo behind. Whether it's an actual spirit of some kind, who knows? Whether it's an echo of a person, as we've mentioned before on the channel, that's really not necessarily the point. I think the point is that a place like that definitely draws that kind of an energetic situation, where that's going to build up and it's going to cause things to happen. So I'm really not surprised. It's a new story to me, but it's not surprising, I think, once we think about it.
I think too, once you have it, know where it's situated, this is situated in places where the American Indian was roaming around, and who knows what happened on those grounds. And history is one of those things that unless it's discovered, it's forgotten. So we don't know the implications of what happened there. We don't know what kind of energy comes with reporting deaths and sad news. And because some people believe that just by reading a book, like the Shemza Makharif behind me, that it would cause a jinn to appear, or even having it in my home would cause a jinn to appear. And some people believe this. They thoroughly think that because you're interacting with it, or because it's there, it's more likely to take shape and take root. And you make a good point. It could be an echo. I think a lot of this stuff, I think all of it for the most part is echoes or something nefarious, because it's, if Fran loved her job that much, right? And she was like, "Yeah, I love this job." Then I think her echo would want to be at the place she loved being, and not the soul itself, but whatever remains of that sort of lingers around to recapture some of that old glory. But some good points there, Stephen, the uneven. What are your thoughts on this? Because I know you're
Yeah.
not from here. You probably have no idea what we're talking about, where we're talking about. You might have heard of Akron, like
Yeah.
in passing, maybe because of LeBron James. That's what I would think. But what are your thoughts on this situation and the building having a ghost like Fran?
Well, it sounds like your typical ghost story, moving stuff around slightly and just, the hearty laugh and all that stuff that you mentioned earlier. So it just sounds like a very stereotypical, generic ghost story to me. And as you both mentioned, with it being at like a facility, like what did you say it was? Like a news reporting
It was
facility?
the Akron Beacon Journal.
Yeah.
It's
So,
basically a newsroom and
like
where
you
the press
said,
is run.
yeah, like you guys said, they probably deal with a lot of stories and a lot of death and, all sorts of stuff there. And what I'm wondering, what I've been wondering lately is, like Rob has said before about ghosts being frequencies or echoes or whatever you want to call it. I think that's a very good way of putting it. And I wonder if some of these ghosts aren't necessarily just people creating this energy themselves with their own thoughts and the law of attraction or, whatever you want to call it. It is been proven by science and placebo effect. So what if these
That's
people
a
are
good one.
actually causing these things to happen just because they've heard stories about how this place might be haunted by this particular ghost? So they create these things and they build up all this energy with their mental thoughts until their thoughts become the reality of what they experience.
I think that's uh, a good concept. It's almost Tulpa-esque when we
Yeah,
think about it, or almost a self-fulfilling prophecy of, this person was beloved by so many people. So her not being there, they're almost creating that person to fill a void. And
exactly.
so because they're creating that person to fill a void, it's almost like she appears.
The ghost is
Now,
the tulpa.
I have to wonder though, her not being there, them not being there, that energy that can't be dispersed at that location. I wonder if we went there and looked around for things, if in fact that she would appear, because we don't have connections with her. We know of her, or we
We've
know
heard the
of the
story now.
legend. Yeah. So maybe
Yeah.
because we've heard the story, it gives a little bit of life to that energy. But I would be curious to see that, if, okay, let's take some rando dando stranger from the street that doesn't know anything about Akron, doesn't know anything
Yeah.
about the Akron Beacon Journal, even if they do know about Akron, if they don't know about Fran, right? If they don't know about the Phantom, bring them in there
Like
with
you said,
us.
about the Trans-Allegheny Asylum.
Yes. Yes, yes, exactly. And I think that I think that's something we need to start pursuing as a team, is taking people, or taking one of us that doesn't know, like we would take you to one of these places, because I'm not going to cover all of them, and there's quite a
Yeah.
few, and just see what you see and see if it matches up to things that we also have read about and talked about. So
Yeah.
very excellent points. The next one I want to get into, and this is something that Spider and I probably would really enjoy going to, and that's a place called The Perfect Pour out there in Akron, a little bit down the street from the Akron Beacon Journal, and that is a veteran-owned establishment that serves up burgers and bourbon, and it opened in 2023 between the Diamond Deli and Da Vinci's Pizza. So you could get sloshed and go get a sandwich, or get sloshed and go get, a bite of pizza, which I think would be fantastic. Sounds like a good idea. Now, this establishment was said to be owned, as many establishments were in the early 1900s, by an organized crime organization, or as many of us know them as, the Mafia. That's right. It was a thriving speakeasy, complete with bootleg liquor and jazz music. All of us, I like those things. Well, maybe not so much the bootleg liquor. I like being able to see, and some of that stuff would make you blind if you drank it. The old bathtub gin, as it were. But the jazz music, I'm a big fan of that. Now, employees now say that after closing is when things start to liven up. dishes crashing in the kitchen, pans flying off of the hooks, our infamous cold spots, which seem to be par for the course in paranormal situations, and ghastly entities brushing cold fingers upon your skin. Not a big fan of that last one. I don't want to be touched by ghastly, ghostly fingers. Not a big fan. Um, so it is said that an odd and quiet man tended bar there at that speakeasy. He poured drinks, he talked to the patrons, but he never asked questions of himself. Kind of kept his personal business to himself, as many should do at their jobs. Many should be doing this at their jobs. Shouts out to him for that. But it wasn't a polite reason, it was a more nefarious reason. It was said that he was in debt to some powerful people, aka probably the mob. And one night, he actually hung himself in the back. Now, as many people know, whenever there is a grisly death or a gruesome death, that spirit's spirit or that person's spirit continues to roam the area in which they died, which would suck. Because imagine working a job and then you die and then you have to haunt the place that you worked. So you can't go home, you don't get to clock out. That'd be like me and Spider, dying at Sears, and then we got to haunt Sears. It's not even Sears now, so we're going to be doing things that Sears people would do. I'd be getting shoes, and he would be getting ratchets.
On the plus side,
Yeah,
since it's the same building, we would probably get the whole mall building, which means we'd be able to get down there for coffee.
and we could stop at the GameStop and be down there for
we
an
can
hour.
haunt the whole thing from
And then
food court and everything.
We could be told that we're going to miss the morning meeting, and then we could just look that person in the face and say, "We don't care. We don't go to morning meetings."
I do that anyways.
No, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
So a line cook, getting into another example here, a line cook, he was finishing up his shift when he saw and heard the clatter of a metal skillet skidding across the floor. Now, in a completely separate instance, a waitress was said to be touched by an ice cold hand brushing against her neck. Now, of course, thinking it was a draft, she ignored it, but it did it again, and then she felt a firm tap on her shoulder. Now, of course, when she turned around, because this seems to be par for the paranormal course, every time that as soon as somebody turns around, there's nothing there. So it scared her. It scared her. And then our third and final tale of the spooky evening is one night when a dishwasher was closing up shop and he was headed home for the night. He was reaching for his keys and all the glasses behind the bar rattled. Now, as he let out a gasp, the glasses stopped rattling and it never occurred again. But that individual will always remember that. Now, the bartender is said to still haunt his once employed establishment, seeking to give the customers that perfect pour of fright. Now, gentlemen, this is a different establishment. We're dealing with some organized crime elements here. And a lot of times, organized crime element locations are said to, in fact, haunt or be haunted by some spooky spirits and spooky ghosts. So we'll start with Steven here. Steven, what are your thoughts on organized crime and the hauntings here at this veteran ran establishment?
Well, I think it's more likely to be haunted, like as you said, because organized crime, there's usually violent deaths, and that is typically going to cause some sort of death echo. But the question is whether it causes a death echo where they just repeat their death on a loop, or if it causes, like you've described, more of an actual haunting. And what I would be interested in is what is actually the difference between a death echo and a true, like, legitimate haunting. Like, what determines what kind of ghost that is? Like, how violent does the death have to be to make it more than an echo and a haunting? Or does it matter, like, does the level of violence even matter in what kind of death it is? Does it depend on the individual beliefs of the ghost, or how angry they get? Or, there's a lot of variables here that I think would be very interesting to look further into. And, with organized crime, obviously you're going to feel very strongly about that one way or the other. You're either really, really into it or really, really against it. I feel like there's not going to be very many people that have a neutral feeling towards organized crime.
He said, "You're really going to be into some organized
Yep.
crime, or you're not going to be into
Yep.
organized crime." There is no in between. Excellent points. I think the echo aspect is interesting because is this something we make up in our own heads? We see an old building, we've seen the scary stories, we've seen the old movies. Some of us, like myself, have seen movies like White Heat with the old gangster movies and "Mom on top of the world" and just blazing Tommy guns and law enforcement and Elliot Ness and Al Capone. So you have to wonder if, in fact, it is because of our preconceived notions of organized crime, our preconceived notions of old buildings, because nobody sees a new building and says, "Yeah, that bad boy right there is, in fact, haunted. Let's get in there." And
Our
it's
thoughts are
interesting.
reality.
Right, right. And it's interesting because I've been to the Heyman House in West Virginia in downtown. Well, it's kind of downtown Sutton. There's not really a downtown Sutton. It's just Sutton. And Spider's been there as well. Upstairs at the top floor is mirrors, and those mirrors are silver lined. And the silver was said to repel spirits, said to repel ghosts. Vampires themselves couldn't look into mirrors made with silver. So it's interesting that a lot of these old buildings have those sort of paranormal touches, and the newer buildings don't. But it's those old buildings that carry that spirit, and you have to wonder if, in fact, the only reason those older buildings are haunted and the new ones not is because they have more history and they have more energy placed in them, as to where your newer buildings obviously would not have that. Or is the materials that are made out of that attract things, spirits, notions, feelings, thoughts. A lot of newer buildings, they don't have the finesse and the fine things that some of the older buildings do. The columns, the archways, those kinds of things. They just have everything is modern. Everything is just it's there for utility, not for look. And so I ask you, Spider, what are your thoughts on that concept in terms of relates to this old buildings and hauntings as opposed to new buildings and no hauntings?
Well, the more history something has, the more history that's localized in the place, the more likely you've got the chance for emotional energy buildup. It's been lived in, it's been loved in, it's been made angry in. The new places haven't been here long enough. New places, they haven't had the time to absorb that kind of stuff, to really have the energy build up, get to a point where it makes sense, unless it was particularly jarring or a particular spike. Like if you have a new skyscraper, and within the first couple weeks, somebody decides, "I hate this place, I'm done with it," leaps out the top of the skyscraper,
Oh, I
that's
thought you were going
different.
somewhere else with that.
That's a big impact, you know. But it all depends, and especially the older buildings. And to get to a couple of earlier points, um, sometimes with organized crime, as they say, it's not personal, it's just business.
Mm-hmm.
And that lowers the emotional impact a little bit, at least from one party involved. I mean, if you're the victim, that doesn't really mean a whole lot to you. You're the one getting whacked.
Oh, it's just
But
it's fine. I
I
don't mind.
mean, on the other hand, the other people's like, "Hey, it's just business." And unless it was a mob hit of some kind in retaliation, in which case then it's personal, then everybody involved is personal, and then the energy, there's more to it because there's more feelings from more parties involved. And one other interesting thing that I wanted to point out also, um, to address the fact that when you turn around, there's no ghost tapping you on the shoulder. Where did it go? You felt it on the shoulder, but it's not there. Steven's going to love this. Quantum mechanics tells us
Yep.
that a particle does not have its existence in play until it's
Until it is
observed.
observed.
And so if you turn around, you're turning around right at that moment where you don't
observe
believe in ghosts. You just believe there's going to be a person there. And if there's not a person there, you can't observe a person. And so there's nothing there.
But what if you believe there's a ghost there? Would you observe the ghost?
You might have seen something. You might have seen a shadow. You might see, because people do sometimes see things.
And you
They'll
do
turn
see things
around
of
and
your
you'll see
periphery better than straight on.
you'll see shadow figures, or you might see ghostly figures, and that's kind of the difference, because we expect different things when we look for things. And even some people who believe in certain things don't always expect to see something. And because of that, they might not see anything, whereas somebody next to them might be like, you didn't see that? There was this shadow figure right there, and it was
It's
looking
like
at
Shorty
you,
knows
it came
cat.
after you. And so it's an interesting point to consider when you're trying to debunk evidence, because again, we're just touching on the very edges of quantum theory and quantum mechanics and string theory, of course. And what's the one I'm missing?
Oh no, I just actually wanted to add on to what you were saying about
Oh,
quantum
okay. I
mechanics.
thought you were like gonna inject another.
I also wanted to add on to what you were saying about quantum mechanics and say that technically, according to science and quantum mechanics, our very reality is subjective because it has to go through our eyes, through our hands, whatever sense we're using, hearing, whatever. It has to go through our body into our brain and be processed by our brain before our reality is determined, which means that nobody on this entire planet experiences actual reality. Every single human experiences a subjective reality that is interpreted by their own mind.
It's interesting that you say this, because I don't look like, to me, I don't look like I look the way I look to you guys. And that's interesting to me.
Bill Paxton,
right?
Like
he thinks I just faked my death and became me. He's that, and got a job at Sears, because why not? Why not work retail after a lucrative movie career? And that's John Moxley from AEW right there. So it's not like it's a hard pressed thing. Yeah, that's amazing. I do think it's interesting that a person's peripheral sees those things more so than the straight on vision does.
That's why military people look from side to side,
which I think plays into our ancient past of who we were and how we had to survive. You had to be able to see things out of this area head on. You could do something. Like if I see Spider coming at me with a knife and he's rushing forward, I can already decide what I'm gonna do. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna trip him. I'm gonna disarm him. I'm gonna tell him he's not a good person. I'm gonna, hey, you're not a good person. Stop doing that. And he's gonna have to stop doing it. But if you guys are over here, it's a little bit more of a problem, because now I have to adjust focus and I have to be like, okay, there's something over here. And this is something that's practiced in warfare with the Fuma clan in Japan during the Sengoku era, the Warring States period of Japan, is they would get into the periphs of the samurai, because the samurai fought nobly and the Fuma did not at all. They remind me a lot of the guerrilla warfare we used against the British during the Revolutionary War. So you got periph, and they know that. And I think that's an interesting aspect, because I think our peripheral vision, the reason we see those things is based on survival from who we were, and adaptation from who we were when we were, whether we were in, Israel, whether we were in the Middle East, whether we were in, different parts of the world in our ancient past. That is what I believe our peripheral is a survival mechanism, more so than it is just like going side on. I can read right here, right? But there might be something that moves out of my peripheral, and I got to go. You got
to like turn your head and then make a decision after turn your head.
That's right. And so that's a really good approach to that. Now, Spider, I know you wanted to say something. What would you like to say, good sir?
I think I lost it, but I was going to mention something else. I think that was related. That part of that is because predators that would attack, like groups of predators who aren't just single hunters, that's how they kind of get people. They go from one side, draw your attention, somebody gets you from the other side. Yep. And so it's, again, it does play into survival instinct, that if you're not able to react to both locations by being able to see both things coming at you, you're going to direct your attention away from something that's the threat, because something else is going to be taking that and being like, oh yeah, come get me. Haha, you can see me. Oh, my buddy just bit your leg off. So, it happens in the animal kingdom, and it's just because we're evolved and civilized doesn't mean we're immune to it.
And that's funny, because it's true. Predators will do that. They'll be like, and you're looking this way, meanwhile their buddy is behind you, and you ain't got time to react because they're already on you. And that's a very good way to put it. And that's how a lot of warfare was used back, in the Revolutionary War, but also with the Fuma clan and many other situations involving warfare where, hey, mom, hey,
Afghanistan.
buddy, what's up right here? And then all of a sudden you got an arrow in your neck. You know what I mean? So it's a very interesting situation. So our next great stop on our Summit County adventure here is the Evans Building. Now, the Evans Building was built in the 1900s, but its history is older than that. And in 1825, Henry Clark built a two-story tavern. Now, this was to give the Ohio and Erie Canal workers a place to eat, drink, and rest. And it was actually the city's first hotel and public housing. Now, what we have to understand here is the Erie Canal has many locks, and there was one that used to be there was one where I used to live. There's one in Canal Fulton where me and Spider went, and we checked it out. And it's a long series of corridors and places where boats would go through. You come through the lock, the boat moves over, the water drains, water lifts, next boat goes through, and it's a process. And a lot of murders happened. A lot of people died on that Erie Canal. People would get malaria while working on the canal, and where they dropped, they would lay. They were burying them there, right there. Because, I mean, honestly, that's what you would do. You're not going to take them anywhere. You got enough dirt, you just bury them right there. And so a lot of the time, these boats would come down and they'd have little bars and taverns and places like that for people to get off, go get a drink, go get a rest before you had to get back on and head back down the next day. I think that'd be a very interesting life. I think it'd be a very hard life. But I think traveling that canal and dropping off supplies, I think would be a fun adventure. I wish the locks were still in operation, but many of them sadly have had the water drained. The rivers have moved. The ones that were by me or where I used to live, those have been shut down. The river was moved over, and nobody comes down through there but canoes. Nobody's bringing goods and services. I'm not opposed to the Uncanny Pirate era. And I think that's really interesting. So that's something we have to take into account. When you talk about Summit County and Northeast Ohio, you have to talk about the Ohio and Erie Canal because it was an important way for transportation to move into the interior of the United States. Very fascinating place. And in 1836, Akron's very first mayor, like the first mayor of all time, Seth Iredell, was elected to the walls of Clark's Tavern, within the walls, not to the walls. He wasn't the mayor of the walls. He was elected within those walls. Now, this structure ends up lasting up until about the 19th century when it is demolished to make way for a burgeoning commerce and finance industry in the form of People's Savings Bank. And in 1915, Evans Building and Loan Association acquired the site where it stands to this day. Now, some of the hauntings of this location include the cold drafts, which seem to be, like I said, part and parcel for, or part and par for the course when it comes to these hauntings. Now, distant whispers and the feeling of eyes watching them from the floors above are some of the other incidents that happen at this location. Now, late night, there was a janitor who heard footsteps above him. Once again, these people that work these jobs, I got to give them a shout out because it could not be me. I could see Spider doing something like this. Just working the late night shift. He ain't doing nothing. And upstairs, there's feet and people are walking around. And then he hears this and he shouts out, chuckling to himself, if anyone's upstairs, you better be paying rent. Upon him completing that sentence, a door that was locked viciously slams shut. Now, I don't know about you guys. Nope, we're clocking out. We're going home. It's time to go home. Nope.
How was it locked if it was already open in order to slam shut?
Because the janitor thought he had locked it. So the door probably had opened due to some mysterious, thing, then slammed shut. Or he forgot to lock it. Either way, the door slamming shut, I would want to know if the door is on a slant because we've had this conversation about slamming doors. if it's on a slant, but if it's not on a slant and there's no gusts of wind, because I don't know about you guys,
It
but
could just be a really heavy door too.
if you open your windows during storms, the winds, it'll slam like my bathroom door. It'll slam my bathroom door shut. And that's not a ghost. That's just wind.
Yeah.
That's just pressure from the wind moving at an accelerated rate, and it causes the door to slam. Right. So he ends up going upstairs, and he sees this door that he thought he closed, that he heard slam shut, wide open. It's right there, wide open. At that point, I'm going to have to get a day job. Because it's not so much the idea of the ghost that scares me, or I shouldn't say scares me, but troubles me.
Just
it's the fact that
you'll be fine.
That some crazy person could be in there. Because the spirit himself, they ain't gonna do nothing. They ain't gonna be able to do nothing, But if there's a person in there, we gonna have to get physical. And I don't want to beat nobody up at my job. I mean, nobody wants to beat people up at their job. So that's something maybe you like to beat people up at your job, Steven. I can see you beating people up at your job. And even Spider, I know you probably wanted to beat up a couple people or two at your job. But we don't beat people up at our jobs. All right, there. I've said we don't beat people up at our jobs. I want to beat people up at my job.
We just don't.
Unless your name is Dave Bautista, and then you do get to beat people up.
Then you beat people up at their jobs. Or you're Macho Man Randy Savage.
That is your job.
Up at your jobs. Another night, a security guard saw a woman dressed in old-fashioned garb, and as he approached to aid what he thought was just somebody that was lost in the building, she vanishes, which seems to be a very common trope in a lot of haunting tales. People just seem to up and vanish.
Yeah, I don't think that creepy security guard either.
You know what? I don't want to know. We're going to continue on. Finally, a tenant who was used to working late into the night, one night he was working in his office and he felt a presence, an eerie presence. When he packed up to leave, in the mirror, he saw the reflection of a ghost standing right behind him. Now, he turned expecting to see a coworker, and once again, like we discussed earlier, there was no one there. However, when he turned back to look at the window, the reflection was still there, and he saw it slowly start to fade away. A very interesting concept, because usually when you see a reflection in a mirror, you turn to look and nothing's there, you turn back, usually it's gone. We've seen, horror movies love doing that. Horror movies love doing that. They love, like, you washing your face. Oh, you look back. Oh, okay, there's nothing there. But in this instance, the person was still there. Now, Spider, I got to ask you, you being that night janitor, or you being the guy that's working there late night, how do you react to something like this? Like, what would be your first thought if you are burning the midnight oil, as they say, and you get up and you see through the window that there's somebody there, and you turn around and nobody's there, and then you turn back and you see it again? What are you going to do?
I'd be asking them for their rent. More likely, I would probably be like, all right, well, I'm checking this out. Somebody's playing some games with me. That's when you get into investigation mode. You check the whole thing, top to bottom, guess I'm moonlighting as a security guard tonight. I'm going to check the whole thing up and down, because if somebody gets in here, then that's coming out of my pay, because they're going to make a mess, and I didn't say anything, so now I got to check it.
No, you're not a security guard. You're one of the tenants.
Well, yeah, and that's
he knows that.
Okay.
That's because if I just go and leave the spot and go find security or find whoever, by the time we get back, everybody knows nothing's there anymore. Nothing's happening. You can never corroborate anything that way.
Yep.
So you investigate it, you check it out. I mean, this day and age, I got cameras, I got flashlight, I got whatever I need. It's all in this. I'm going to look for it. If I don't find it, I don't find it. And then I make a report to whoever, is security, be like, hey, I saw this stuff going on up there. It's your problem now. But yeah, because I don't get chased off easy. unless somebody's coming at me with a weapon or something and I clearly can't stop them, and there's nothing I can do, I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to see what's going on up here. So it wouldn't bother me too much. I'd be a little bit irritated. I'd be kind of on edge because you can be a little out of sorts without having a full blown panic attack about stuff. Like, it's not going to send me into fight or flight, but it's going to be like, okay, something is going on up here, and I got to keep my wits on. I got to make sure that I'm not dropping the ball up here, because if somebody's playing a game, they might trip me up. So, but other than that, and that's because I'm a specific case, and I haven't had enough actual direct experiences with things happening. Now, if I was a person and this was the first time that had ever happened to me in my life, maybe my attitude would change. Maybe it would freak me out. I don't know. I've never been in the situation enough. I know myself well enough in every other aspect with living people already, but who knows? But I would like to think I would, again, go into full investigation mode, try to find out what was going on, and then we'd see what had happened from there.
Now, Steven, I got to ask you the same question because I'm curious as to what you would do in this situation. What would you do if you're the janitor and the door slam incident happens to you? I'm asking you from a different story. What is your first thought, and then how are you going to go about solving this mystery?
My first thought is, like you said, maybe it's a drafty window or something like that. Because, I mean, even where I work now, we have some very heavy doors. And, like, they're not even on a slant, but they slam shut behind us just because they're so heavy, like weighted doors or something. So my first thought would be, go see how heavy the door is, see if there's an open window or a draft somewhere, just like you see on all the ghost hunter shows. And then if I can't find a draft or an open window, I would just shrug my shoulders and be like, well, that was weird. And then I would probably go see if I could find some salt. And then if I was able to find salt, I would sprinkle it on my right shoulder, sprinkle it on my left shoulder, and then sprinkle a little bit around the back of my neck. And that would protect me from any ghosts that may or may not be there. And then I'd just continue about my job, because I actually deal with that on a regular basis. Not like big things like that, but I do occasionally hear, like, a few times I've heard random coughs behind me and then there's nobody there. Or I'll hear, like, and it's not just me, like our whole crew, like, we'll all hear it. Like, we'll be on the line at night and we'll hear like a door open or something, and we'll, like, 3 or 4 of us will all hear the door, and we'll turn around and there's nobody there. And like one of us will even go out and open the door and look in the hallway, and there's nobody up or down either side of the hallway. But, when all that stuff happens, I just, like I said, grab a pack of salt, put it on my shoulders, and I'm good to go.
Well, you work around a lot of death too.
Yeah.
So I think that is also
It's just normal
key
for me.
that. Right. And that would be normal. And I'm sure you've had some probably interesting experiences dealing with the dead, I guess. I mean, I don't want to say dealing with the dead, but like just dealing with the propensity for death. Not so much dealing with, because you're not the mortician, you're not the undertaker, you're not the guy examining the bodies, this, that,
and like, maybe I think that might be one reason why I feel like, I don't react like other people to death. Like, I don't see it as necessarily a sad thing as much as other people do. Like, it's sad, but I also understand that they're getting, an escape from all the misery, pain, and torture of this life, and they're getting their mission. Like, not to get too overly religious, but I do personally believe that we all have something in life that we're supposed to do. And, once we accomplish our mission, we can pass away, but we cannot pass away until we accomplish our mission. And I believe that for most of us, my idea of a perfect life is just to make the world a better place before we pass on.
Okay. Gentlemen, we are nearing closing time. I will quickly tell this tale because I find it to be very fascinating. So I used to work at the Civic Theater, which is in downtown Akron. It's near Lock 3. And I was working late into the night. I used to clean the place after big shows, rock stars. I've met a couple famous people, not to brag or anything. And I was cleaning up, and there is a big door. I don't know. They remodeled it, so I don't know if the downstairs looks different. But at the time, there was a long staircase that you went down as an employee. And when you went to the bottom, there was a large double door, metal steel door there. When you opened it up, it was basically all of the pillars that held everything up. It was it basically held the entire building up.
Foundation.
Yes. And it looked like it was about as big as a football field. It probably wasn't. It probably wasn't that big, but you couldn't see how far it went back. That was the crazy part. We would go in there, and I walked a little bit ways, and I got to a point where you still not seeing where you're going. It's starting to get dark. You don't know what's down there. And so I remember going in there, and I remember seeing somebody off in the distance in front of me. And I remember looking, and I looked back, and I looked again, and they were a little bit closer. And I remember turning around, and boy, let me tell you, my feet never moved so fast in my entire life. I skedaddled because I didn't know if it was a vagrant that was, a little not there, or if it was a haunting, because the place does have some crazy hauntings. There's a balcony section where a person that died in the theater supposedly sits up at the top and watches plays, watches shows. You can sometimes see them. I've never seen them, but people say they have seen said person. And that kind of thing is absolutely fascinating to me. So, gentlemen, final thoughts. Let's start with Steven. Steven, what are your final thoughts on these hauntings and, Summit County as a whole, even though you've never been here?
Well, I think for the most part, in general, I think ghosts are probably just, like you said before, frequencies or echoes of their past life and, the memories that they had while they were living here. And while some ghosts may seem a bit more active, like, moving stuff around or walking around, and less on a loop and more like, conscious of what they're doing, it's still just them going through the motions that they had during their life or common things that may happen there. Like you said, the guy who worked at the bar when the bottles like shook, maybe
Right.
there was an earthquake there at one point in time. And maybe, who says ghosts have to be even the ghosts of people? Why can't we have ghosts of natural disasters? That's something that just popped into my head as I was saying that. That's a cool idea. And so, let's promote the idea of ghosts of natural disasters. There you go.
That's what we're gonna put on your tombstone when you
Yep.
die. Promote ghosts of natural disasters. Hashtag Steven. Spider, final thoughts to wrap all this beautiful presentation, this beautiful episode up.
Summit County it has history. It is not necessarily one of the oldest places in the United States, but it does have a lot of history. People tend to forget that Ohio being right next to Pennsylvania having history that dates all the way back to the founding of the country or earlier, that people easily went over into this part of the country as well. So there's been a lot of things that have happened here. And Akron specifically has a lot of historical buildings, being the rubber capital of the United States for a while. You had factory workers before and after unions, so you had a lot of misery back and forth. You have the schools, the colleges, the education, and the canal not too far in Summit County. I mean, the canal itself is just, again, a focus for all sorts of emotional energy, both triumphant and tragic, and all of that goes into play. So I think there's probably a lot more places that have unusual happenings than what we know of, and sometimes people just don't like to talk about them. The famous stuff is pretty cool. I've been to a few of these places. I've seen some of these things in person. The Civic is a nice theater. It's clearly an old theater, and they've done renovations, but you can tell that there's history in that building.
Mm-hmm.
And I would imagine being there without a crowd, being there after dark, without a big show going on, that place can probably get awfully creepy.
It does. It
I
does.
can see it because the chandeliers and everything, and the stage and all that. Yeah, I can just that'd be a perfect spot for an overnight ghost haunt location.
Oh, I agree.
But yeah, it doesn't surprise me too much, and I think that there's probably more there than what we know, and I hope more stories come out, and I hope we get a chance to kind of check some of these places out and see what the veracity of the rumors are.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So, in closing, I think that, you know, having been to some of these places that they talk about, I didn't even mention everything, and I've been to a couple of them. There's a lot of history here. Whether there's ghosts there, whether there's not ghosts there, there's still that history that still permeates the ground that you walk on when you go to Summit County and you walk around. It's a very thriving town now after they've renovated a lot of stuff and they've fixed a lot of the highway stuff. It's very interesting at this point because it's very much a picture of the modern and the old. And I continue to see Akron improving. And with the university up there, and the university takes up a lot of space up there. They bought out a bunch of stuff. They moved the stadium. The stadium now sits on university property as to before it sat at the Rubber Bowl.
Downtown is the university, basically. I mean,
yeah.
there's no getting away from it.
No, it's part of Akron, whether you like it or not. So I'll be interesting to see where it goes from there. But I think as long as we're sitting and looking and understanding, Summit County is always going to have a history, and there's more places in Summit County, just not Akron. There's Ellett, there's Barberton, there's Norton, there's Cuyahoga Falls, there's Greene. It's a very big county. It's not just Akron, and there's all kinds of stories. Rogues Hollow is part of Summit County, so a lot of that stuff is still very fascinating to me, and I would love to see more of it. So, what do we got on deck for next week?
We got ghosts again over
More
here with
ghosts.
me. Yep.
What are you gonna do?
I'm gonna look into the differences between tulpas and ghosts and see if I can actually find any sort of scientific or spiritual evidence to finalize if they're the same thing or if they're different, and kind of what is similar between them and what is different about them, like a contrast to compare, I guess.
Nice. Well, we look forward to it, and as always, why be boring when you can be uncanny? We will see all of you beautiful uncanny folks next week. Take care.